Dissidents, journalists, and their families are targeted with violence and political persecution. Even advocates outside of India fear that their family members will be targeted if they speak out. In 2005, when Modi was the chief minister of Gujarat, the United States State Department suspended Modi's US visa after finding him complicit in the 2002 Gujarat riots. Over 1,000 people were killed. 3/4 of them were Muslim. Modi later banned BBC documentary that highlighted his complicity in the riots. And we are told we must now turn a blind eye to the repression because of foreign policy concerns, even though human rights are supposed to be at the center of our foreign policy. But Prime Minister Modi is not even a reliable geopolitical ally. Modi has maintained a close economic ties with Putin even after his illegal invasion of Ukraine and continues to rely on Russia for oil and weapons. We are holding today's briefings to hear the facts, not spin. And I'm incredibly grateful to our panelists in delivering some of those facts.
India is an important country with a rich history and a diverse society and an important ally of the United States. We celebrate the Indians who migrated here and made the United States their home and contributed to the diversity and the richness of American society. These realities are not in question. It's because we value our friendship with the Indian people that we also have to speak the truth about human rights abuses in India that are ongoing, well documented by credible observers, and deeply troubling. We hear regularly from representatives of ethnic and religious minorities in India who believe deeply in India's secular constitution, but fear that their rights are being systematically undermined. I'm talking about the Muslim population, which is 200 million strong, but also about Sikhs, Christians, and Dalits who've come to me to talk to me about their fears. We've also seen a crackdown on freedom of expression and freedom of the press. Charges of defamation, sedition, and endangering national security have escalated to such an extent that it looks like the government is trying to silence critical voices. Civil society organizations have faced threats, legal harassment, excessive police force, even deadly violence. Some foreign NGOs, including Amnesty International, have been forced to close down their operations. In 2019, as co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, I convened a hearing on human rights in Jammu and Kashmir. We heard about a litany of problems that were only made worse by the decision to strip away autonomy. The situation has only grown worse since. Now, we don't raise these issues to discredit India. We raise them because we know from our own experience that if human rights problems are not confronted and resolved, they will fester and deepen and undermine a country's promise. So we call on the Indian authorities to take steps to reverse these well-documented and unfortunate trends and restore the full promise of the Indian Constitution. And by the way, we're working to do the same here in the United States. We're not perfect, and we have issues that we have to deal with here as well. But I am grateful for this opportunity to listen to experts on their analysis of what the situation is and some suggestions of things that we might want to do here in Congress. So
thank you so much for being here. This is an incredibly important discussion. It is hard in an institution like ours to continue to speak truth because so many people have been able to have access to this institution before many of our minority groups or many of our voices, especially those that continue to pursue justice, especially around human rights. I'm just incredibly proud to be serving with Ilhan Omar, who's always been courageous and always standing on the right side. So thank you so much for leading this discussion. And I want you to know the first person to bring this discussion to me was actually Hindu in Michigan. He came to me, he was a professor, and he's like, Rashida, I know that you're Muslim, but I need your help. And I said, what can I do? I don't know if they're going to listen to me. But this was about 3 years ago. And we created an amazing coalition of people of different backgrounds from India, not only from Kashmir, which always is centered around that issue, but it was Indian Christians, minorities, folks that are working in the media outlet and education. And it was an incredible discussion. By the time we were always ending our work group discussions about the resolution we worked on together, we were all in tears. We wish that people could see that side of us all coming together in this way. And that's something that I want to continue to put seeds down for. You all are continuing doing that, again, by being here. As I walked here, it was hard because you can see they knew exactly who I was. They knew where my position was as I was walking through the halls as the speech was ending. But I kept my head up held high because that's what my grandmother taught me. And I was unapologetically not going to allow them to make me squabble and pretend like, I'm a proud justice seeker and a person that believes everyone deserves human rights.
7 years ago, this month, Mr. Modi spoke to Congress, and just one day before that joint session of Congress that Mr. Modi spoke at, there was a hearing at the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, and it was called Challenges and Opportunities, Human Rights in India, Challenges and Opportunities. Chairman McGovern was there. I was one of the witnesses who testified. And since you spoke just now about Pegasus, I'm one of the people whose phone was hacked using Pegasus by the Indian government. So I think what was restricted to the state of Gujarat in 2002 is now all over India. India has 1.4 billion people. Last month, we became the world's most populated country, beating China. And therefore, China and India together have about 2.8 billion people, which is more than 1/3 of humanity. So 1 out of 3 people on the planet are either Chinese or Indian. And China is already a dictatorship, it is an autocracy, it's a one-party rule. India is quite getting there. What was restricted to Gujarat, what was an anomaly, is now the norm in India. That's what's happened. Out of the 1.4 billion people in India, 80% are Hindus. I am a Hindu myself. I work for a Muslim organization. I am a Hindu. And I can tell you, one of the biggest changes that I see now is that the poison of hatred among the Hindus has gone very deep. I speak to large audiences of Muslims across the United States, and I joke with them and I say, you think you guys are a minority? Think about me. Nobody in my extended family wants to talk to me, right? This is where we are, and this is the most worrisome feature. You have this great, huge rivalry between the United States and China, but you do not find Asian Americans, the Chinese American people, who are just going crazy anytime anybody opens their mouth and speaks against Narendra Modi or the Indian persecution of Muslims in India. But the opposite is the case, as many of you politicians know, the opposite is the case. There are American politicians who are now scared of speaking out about Hindu fundamentalism inside the United States because it is so well organized. I just want to take you back to why this is happening. There was an American journalist by the name of William Shirer who had lived in Germany in the 1930s. He wrote several books on Hitler, on the Third Reich. And in one of his books, in the foreword he said, the Western leaders were all very surprised when Hitler started doing what he was doing. If only they had read his book, his autobiography, he is actually merely implementing everything he had said in that autobiography. He had laid out the plans. You didn't want to read it. If you really look at what's going on in India, it has all been documented, it has been written, it has been put on paper by the RSS, which is the motherboard, the main organization of Hindu fundamentalism in India, an organization that inspired the assassin who killed Mahatma Gandhi. And this organization, founded in 1925, fully 14 years before the start of the Second World War, this organization for the last 98 years has had only one objective, and that is to convert India into a Hindu country with virtually no rights for its especially Christians and Muslims. They have written it month after month, year after year, decade after decade in all their communication. This organization has been banned 3 times in India. Mr. Modi became a member of this organization at the tender age of 16 or 17, and this organization is the organization that rejected the Constitution of India in 1950 when that Constitution was promulgated. We are at a point in history in India This is not some random autocrat you are dealing with. You are dealing with a very organized movement that is 98 years old. The founders of this ideology, they wrote extensively in support of Hitler. One of the key founders, the guy who Mr. Modi has put his statue at a new parliament building, that guy wrote that Hitler has shown that races cannot live together, and Hitler has shown what purity of race means, right? That's who these people are. That is what they have followed over the decades. That's what they still believe in. And that is why we need to understand they are not just a threat to India, they're not just a threat to Muslims, they're not just a threat to Christians, they are a threat to world peace. If America is serious about its national security objectives, if America is serious about its geopolitics, if the President of the United States must be the statesman he's been elected to be and not, unfortunately, look like a salesman for the defense contractors, then you have to take a stand and you have to understand that you are jeopardizing peace, you are jeopardizing stability by supporting the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, by supporting his political movement, by supporting his ideology. This must stop. For the sake of America, it must stop. I'm going to conclude by just saying there has to be a ray of hope. And the ray of hope is that even though Hindus in India are 80%, Mr. Modi in the last election got only 36% of the national vote. That is very critical for people to understand. When people think, oh my God, he's loved by all the Hindus, oh my God, he's so popular. When President Biden says, oh my God, you're so popular, I need your autograph. Please understand, 80%, India's population is 80%, Hindus are 80%, only 36% of the national vote is what he got. In the state of Karnataka in South India, where elections were held a month and a half ago, only 5% are Muslim, more than 90% are Hindus. They rejected the BJP, they threw them out, right? So there is hope, it is political, the change has to come from within India, but in America, we must not normalize this. I can only give you the example of Pakistan. Unfortunately, going back in history, it was the United States which actually normalized both fundamentalism and persecution in the country of Pakistan, and look where you are with the country of Pakistan. You can't even walk on the streets in Pakistan, right? It's in America's interest to ensure that India stays stable, India continues to have peace and progress, that social hostility does not exist in India. The state of Manipur that Commissioner Schneck referenced, that you spoke about, that I think Chairman McGovern also spoke about, it borders Myanmar. There's massive, it has got a porous border. How on earth does escalation of violence in the state of Manipur advance national security objectives is a question I asked a top official of the National Security Council when they invited me and a couple of others to speak with them last month. And I said, can you explain to me, how does this violence advance your own national security objectives? Because Manipur borders Myanmar, which is a vassal state of China who you don't like at all. So these are questions that America must understand. This cannot be. It will be a pity if America can only think about $3 billion in sales of drones, $34 billion in sales of aircraft, Boeing aircraft. I mean, it's not going to happen, it's not going to work.